Hello, how's it going? So we're going to be looking at a comparison between the King James Version and the NIV, which is a translation. I think it's a good one to go to if it's one you want to look at just for what is kind of all around. I know the NIV's all over, and look at like a key difference in the text. I don't think the NIV is necessarily wrong or anything. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. Personally, the way I've been reading the Bible recently is I try to start with the King James and settle for the NIV if I just can't do the old-timey language at that point in time, because I do find there's a little bit more depth in terms of vocabulary sometimes with the King James, and that's kind of what I want to show you guys here, just to get your thoughts going about what you could be missing if you only ever read the NIV and if you never reference the King James. And then we're just going to read one passage from both the NIV and the King James. So this is a pretty well-known verse from the Bible. It's one that I find very powerful and I try to remember often. And we'll just jump in and read it. So the King James is, "For a just man falleth 7 times, and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief." That's Proverbs 24:16 from the King James, and then Proverbs 23 from the NIV is, "For the righteous fall 7 times, for though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again, but the wicked stumble when calamity strikes." Okay, so on the surface they both say the same thing, but when we look at that second half of the verse, that's what the difference is. So in the first half, both the King James and the NIV have this example of someone falling 7 times and rising up again an 8th time. So a fall is a moment, right? But in the second half of the verse, we see a little difference. So in the second half of the NIV, we have the wicked stumble when calamity strikes, right? So stumbling, to me, it's like tripping over like a root in the ground, which is a moment in time, right? The King James, though, we have the fall into mischief. So to me, there's a difference here where there's a moment where the righteous person falls, and then the righteous person gets back up after that moment, and then a wicked person falls and stays in a state of mischief, whereas the righteous person falls and gets back up quickly, right? So it's kind of like, let's say you slip up and do something that you don't often do. Well, there's a big difference between slipping up, doing it once, apologizing to God, and then correcting your path, and then, or slipping up, doing it once, and then that one time leading to doing it every day for 6 months, right? There's a big difference between those two scenarios. And the King James kind of outlines that, whereas the NIV, I think the second half is a little bit lost there, because you have a moment and then a moment instead of a moment and then a state, as you can see here. So that's what I want to show you guys with that. And then we're also just going to read the same passage, Romans 14 through 25, in both the NIV and the King James, just to kind of read both side by side. And yeah, so Romans 7:14 through 25 in the NIV is, "We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do, for what I do to do, I do not. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good, as it is. It is no longer myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. For if I do what I do not want to do. It is no longer I who do it, but it is the sin living in me that does it. So I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind, and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within me. What a wretched man I am! Who will rescue me from this body that is subject to death? Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I myself in my mind am a slave to God's law, but in my sinful nature a slave to the law of sin. Okay, so that's the NIV. Now we're going to read the King James. Romans 7:14-25, King James. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that I do, I not. But what I hate, that I do. If then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that it is good. Now then it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. For the good I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Now if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man. But I see another law in my members, waging war against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, with the mind I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh the law of sin. So I don't have any particular point over these two passages, but I do think this passage pairs well with, the righteous falls 7 times and rise again. If you've given into something recently, remember that you want to not stay in that state of mischief, but get back up quick. And then Romans 7:14-25, either in the NIV or the KJV, it's a good passage to go and read in those moments, and just kind of study what Paul said about the mechanics of how we give in to sin and the intermingling of our flesh and our soul. That because currently our flesh and our soul are attached, right? We're living in our bodies, our souls are living in our bodies, and our flesh is sinful. But we need to, as the end of the passage says, we need to trust that Jesus is going to deliver us from our sinful flesh. I guess one small detail I noticed, just to mention some thought, I noticed the word carnal in verse 14. In verse 14 here, looks like it's unspiritual. I do sometimes just the vocab, like the word carnal, I find to be a little bit more vivid. So you can kind of start to see the comparison there. But like I said, guys, I start with the KJV most of the time and try to settle for the NIV, or just if I'm reading the NIV and I want to get a little bit more depth, I'll try to flip to the KJV. But I'm a fan of KJV, and kind of showed a good comparison here, I think, as to why. Thanks for watching.